In ancient Egypt, the night was never silent. While the body slept, the gods could speak. And their messages were recorded on what are known as dream papyri, a written tradition that arose in the New Kingdom during the time of the Ramesside pharaohs. The most famous is the Chester Beatty Papyrus III, housed in the British Museum. A true dream book, written over 3,000 years ago, it is the only complete one to have survived. But it wasn't alone. Other texts, such as the Carlsberg Papyri 13 and 14, stories like that of Sinuhe, and royal stelae like that of Thutmose IV, reveal that the Egyptians explored the meaning of dreams for centuries. The evidence suggests that these texts were in the hands of specialists, lector priests and temple scribes, trained in interpreting signs and omens. And centuries later, in healing temples, priests dedicated to oracular dream rituals guided devotees to receive revelatory dreams. A dream could bring prosperity or warn of imminent danger. For example, if one dreamed of drinking beer, it was good, a symbol of abundance. But if one was caught in a storm, it was bad, a harbinger of conflict. This is what the priests of the Ramesside era wrote in one of the oldest dream manuals in the world. For them, sleep was a liminal space, the moment when the boundary between humans and gods became thinner. Today, only fragments remain, pieces of ink and papyrus fiber. But within them beats a powerful idea that even in the darkness, life continued to speak, and those who knew how to read dreams could hear it. In ancient Egypt, green, waj, was the color of life itself, a pigment carved from stone, believed to renew the world. Most of Egypt's green pigment came from malachite, a copper-rich mineral crushed into a vivid, enduring powder. Its use goes back to the very beginnings of ancient Egyptian culture. As early as the Hellenistic period, artisans were already grinding this stone to color objects, skin, and sacred spaces. The ancient Egyptians mined malachite in the eastern desert and in the Sinai Peninsula, where bright green veins of copper ore threaded through the rock. Malachite was ground into an ultrafine powder, then washed with water to remove impurities and select the finest particles. Once prepared, this green dust was mixed with organic binders, like gum arabic, acacia sap, or even egg, so that it would adhere to plaster, wood, papyrus, and other surfaces. The result: vibrant green paint for murals, ritual objects, and the eye cosmetics that offered both color and protection. Alongside natural malachite, they later developed a second green, a synthetic pigment. Derived from the same technology as Egyptian blue, it appeared centuries afterwards, when artisans had mastered high-temperature kilns. By heating silica, lime, and copper minerals, they created a glassy green frit used for murals and decorative objects. Other green tones existed, created through mixtures or later pigments, but malachite remained the most ancient and meaningful green of Egypt. Green-colored temple walls, amulets, coffins, jewelry, among others. It was the color of glowing papyrus, of healing, and of the rebirth promised by Osiris. In ancient Egypt, knowledge was not something to be stored and forgotten. It was something that had to be kept alive. Writing was not neutral. Words carried power, memory, and divine order. And for this reason, ancient Egypt created a unique institution, the Per-Ankh, the House of Life. The House of Life is attested from the Old Kingdom onward, more than 4,000 years ago. Unlike stone temples, These spaces were often built of mud brick, which is why almost none survive today. Yet their existence is confirmed through inscriptions and archaeology. At Amarna, archaeologists discovered stamped mud brick bearing the words House of Life, offering rare physical evidence of such an institution. More recently, at the Ramesseum in Luxor, excavations revealed a space interpreted as a house of life or scribal school, complete with teaching materials and exercises. These discoveries confirm what texts had long suggested. The House of Life was real, functional, and essential. The House of Life was far more than a simple library. It functioned as a multifunctional institution of knowledge, a library, archive, and workshop where sacred texts were copied, stored, and renewed. Beyond religious ritual texts, medical scrolls, astronomical treatises, and mathematical manuals were studied and preserved here. It also served as an educational center, training scribes, priests, and specialists in languages, law, and science. In some temples, it was a hub of innovation, producing expertise essential to administration, temple ritual, and cultural continuity. In every sense, it was real, functional, and essential to ancient Egyptian intellectual and religious life. In ancient Egypt, more than 4,000 years ago, a dog received a funeral normally reserved for nobles. He was not a god. He was not a symbol. He was a real dog. His name was Abutiu, also known as Abutiu. And we know his story because his death was carved in stone. At Giza in 1935, archaeologists found that one of the limestone blocks used in a 6th dynasty mastaba had been reused after the demolition of an earlier funerary chapel. Its inscription records the offerings ordered by the king for a dog named Abutiu. He was granted a ceremonial burial, as the inscription reads. The dog which was the guard of His Majesty, Abutiu is his name. His Majesty ordered that he be buried, ceremonially, that he be given a coffin from the royal treasury, fine linen in great quantity, and incense. His Majesty also gave perfumed ointment, and ordered that a tomb be built for him by the gangs of masons. His Majesty did this for him in order that he, the dog, might be honored before the great god Anubis. Animals were often shown beside their owners in ancient Egypt. They were named, cared for, and remembered. Abutu's story tells us something essential. The bond between humans and animals is not modern. It is not a recent sentiment. It is ancient and deeply human. In ancient Egyptian art, we see dogs hunting beside their owners, sleeping beneath their chairs, sharing daily life. Today, in a time when many animals are given as gifts, and later abandoned, the story of Abutiu reminds us of something very old. An animal is not an object. It is a life entrusted to our care. They already knew this, thousands of years ago. Did you know that in ancient Egypt, not every inscription was meant to be seen? To us, hieroglyphs look like decoration. To the ancient Egyptians, they were something else. On those times, writing was not just symbolic, it was performative. To write was to make something exist. That is why some texts were carved in places that would later be sealed, behind walls, inside coffins, never meant for living eyes. These texts were not hidden to protect secrets. They simply did not need to be seen. Some inscriptions contain mistakes, missing signs, and yet they were left untouched. Once their purpose was fulfilled, perfection no longer mattered. That is why multiple versions of the same texts exist. Some signs were deliberately altered. Dangerous creatures were carved incomplete, so they could not act. They thought that an image could be alive, and therefore it had to be controlled. Some texts were meant to be read, others simply to work.